Hi everyone. This is the second video where we're going to be talking about short stories, about fiction writing. And I want to look at this story and think about character, right? You're going to be writing about character. That's the discussion board assignment that you have. And I want us to think about what character is. Characters are the people that are going to be in our stories. And we have to understand how it is that we kind of define who they are. When we looked at flowers, we knew some things about Mayap. I mean, we knew something about her age. We knew her racial background. She seemed to be a fairly, innocent kid, but we didn't know a lot about her personality, right? We didn't know much about who she was as an individual. And that's something that we want to think about how we can create that in a story. That's one of the things that we enjoy in stories is having these characters that we understand, having these people that we go, oh, this person is so interesting, right? Sometimes we like people because they're bad people. Right? Can you believe that they would do something like that? Right? We enjoy seeing them do those kinds of things over and over again. I want us to think about how it is that we create our own characters and stories. So when you get to writing your own stories, you're going to have people in them. And so how do we know who they are? Part of that's important because, as I said, we enjoy being with certain kinds of people. We enjoy seeing how they behave, but also because who a person is determines what they might get out of their journey. We're talking about journeys here, different people, for different people, journeys might mean different things. Some person, one person might, let's say, be in a plane crash and think one thing, right? And another person might be in a plane crash and think something else. Somebody might, if one person has a near-death experience, they might decide, oh, I'm going to, change my life and be a good person and commit myself to helping other people because I realize that that's what's really important. Somebody else might say, oh, I had this near-death experience. I was in this plane crash, and now I feel like I'm just going to be out for me for the rest of my life, right? And we can understand if the kind of person that is that went into that situation, the kind of person that almost died in a plane crash, let's say, the kind of person that they are going into that situation will determine who they are coming out. Okay, we might we want to be able to think about who our characters are as they begin to go on their journey, and how is it that we can help our readers understand who those characters are. So let's look at this reading and writing about as an example, and let's see where it is specifically that this author, whose name is Toni Cade Bambara, where is it that she is going to be telling us about this character. Now, this character actually speaks to us, right? This is different from the lesson. In the lesson, the author tells us about the character. You should know, hopefully, from 102 that that's what's called the third person when the author tells us about the character. The author says, this is what happened to Mayap. That's a third person. Here we have what's called a first person, which is the character speaks for herself. Either one is fine. You can do either one you want. Just be aware of that there are those differences. But when a character speaks for themselves, it allows us to actually hear their voice, right? It actually hear what's going through their head. The kinds of language that they might use tells us a lot about who they are as a person. So sometimes when we want to understand who a character is, using a first person in some ways, in some situations might be easier. So we have a first-person narrator here. This character, her name is Sylvia, by the way. We'll learn that later on, but we'll figure out something about who she is. And so I want to read through the first few sentences here to see what we're getting and how we're beginning to set up a sense of what kind of person she is, what kind of character she is. So it says here, back in the days when everyone was old and stupid or young and foolish, and me and Sugar were the only ones just right, this lady moved on our block with nappy hair and proper speech and no makeup. Realize that there's a lot of information we're getting in there, right, about who she is. When everyone was old and stupid or young and foolish, and me and Sugar were the only ones just right. That tells you a lot about how she thinks about herself, right? And I want you to think about what that means, but it tells us something about how she thinks about herself and how she thinks about everybody else. Everybody I know around me they're either old and stupid or young and foolish, and me and Sugar, that's her cousin actually, but like my friend, her cousin, they're going to be the only ones just right. What does that say about a person if they say that they're the only ones just right in the world? Everybody else is stupid or foolish, but me, I'm the only one that's just right in the world. That tells you something about the kind of person that she is. This lady moved on our block with nappy hair and proper speech and no makeup. A lot of things that we're getting in there about the person she is. Nappy hair is going to tell us that she's, they're living in an African American community, because that's the thing that we're going to get usually from people who are African Americans. That is, and that hair is going to be nappy because it hasn't been treated. It hasn't been done in such a way that it's going to be straight. And so she's kind of mocking this woman for that. She's mocking her proper speech, which again might tell us something about her class, that she feels that proper speech is a problem. She's kind of mocking her for speaking with proper speech. And no makeup, right? Saying that she kind of looks a mess, right? So she's kind of mocking this woman who moved on to their block. And again, that also tells us something about her as well, if she's going to be doing that. And then it says, and quite naturally we laughed at her, right? So right there, again, backing that up, that she's going to be laughing at at this woman. Laughed at her the way we did the junk man who went about his business like he was some big time president and his sorry ass horse's secretary. They laugh at this lady just like they said they laugh at the junk man. Just to let you know, this story is going to take place in New York City. You might not think it takes place in New York City because we've got somebody who's got a horse. But this takes place in New York City in like the 50s or the 60s, when you're still going to actually have people using horses and wagons to get around. And we've got a junk man here. A junk man is somebody who goes around and collects junk and then recycles it, not dissimilar to what you get in New York City now, where people are going to collect the cans out of the recycling. A similar kind of a thing, whatever kind of junk we have. And this guy goes around in his wagon with his horse and collects junk. And we said we hated her the way we hated the junk man who went out about his business like he was some big time president and his sorry ass horse's secretary. And again, that's a joke that she's making about this. This guy thinks he's so important. He's a junk man, and he thinks he's so important, like he's a president. And the language that she's going to be using there tells us, again, something about who she is. And I want you to potentially think about that, how the author is setting up a sense of how we're supposed to be thinking about her as a person, that she would make these comments. Realize that we're only 2 sentences in, and we're getting all this information because the author is saying, I want you to understand something about her as a character. I want you to understand something about the kind of person that she is. And I've got to get that out fairly soon, so that you go, oh yes, I'm picturing this person in my mind. Next sentence. And we kind of hated her too. Hated the way we did the winos who cluttered up our parks and pissed on our handball walls and stank up our hallways and stairs so you couldn't halfway play hide and seek without a goddamn gas mask. So again, a lot of stuff going on with this. Vocabulary. A lot of, this is an older term that we have, winos. Winos are going to be people who, what we might call now, homeless people, people who might be on the corners drinking, might be asleep or something like that, and the kind of people who, as we say, cluttered up our parks and pissed on our handball ball walls. So people who are going to be, out on the street, and she's going to have a problem with them. And so she hates the wino. We kind of hated her too, the way we hated those winos. And again, that also gives us a sense of where they are, right? That they are in a city, even though we've got, like I said, we had the horse, but it's in a time period when they had horses. The winos or the homeless people are cluttering up the parks, pissing on the handball walls. Handball, by the way, if you don't realize, is something that is not universal. It's a fairly New York City kind of a game. And so she's going to be mad at all that and stank up our hallways and stairs so you couldn't halfway play hide and seek without a goddamn gas mask. And so they're living in an apartment, the hallways and stairs. And she talks about playing hide and seek. And I think that's an interesting thing here, because on one level we might think of her as being old because she's going to be saying things like goddamn gas mask. So she seems like she's a little bit older, but she's young enough that she's playing hide and seek. And I think that's something that Bambara is doing here to give us a clear sense of her age, right? She's just about the age she might be playing hide and seek, but but not so young that she can't curse. And that, again, we might say, what is 11, something like that. That's going to make some sense. And again, maybe a sense that she is. Even though she is a kid who still plays hide and seek, she's got quite an attitude for it if she's going to be speaking in this way. And so those sentences from the beginning already begin to give us a clear sense of who we are dealing with, how we're supposed to think about this character. And again, that becomes important because if nothing else, we can like hear and see her. We enjoy spending some time with her. What else is this character going to say next? That becomes interesting to us. But also, again, she's going to go on a journey. There is something that's going to happen to her. And we want to think about what that journey means to this specific person. What does that journey mean to somebody who is going to be of this particular age and of this particular attitude? Somebody who thinks that she and her friend Sugar are the only ones just right. She doesn't like Miss Moore. She doesn't like this woman who moved onto their block. She doesn't think anybody else in their neighborhood has any sense. And so what kind of journey can we see her going on that might potentially change her attitudes? So keep all that in mind as you read through the story, and the discussion boards that you need to respond to are going to get you to think about how it is that we potentially define her as a character. Again, with an eye towards you when you're going to be writing your own stories, thinking about what kind of information can I include about my characters so that I understand, oh, they're this kind of person. Right? If nothing else, you can see that this character, there's no way we would describe her as a shy or meek person, right? But maybe you do want to write a story about somebody who is shy and meek. How is it that you would do that? What kind of information would you include right there at the beginning so that we would understand, oh, this person is going to be a rather shy and meek person? So keep all that in mind as you read through the rest of the story, and then as you respond to the discussion boards.